Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Amaze, the short version, the teaching channel. We are into the teaching channel of our podcast, and I'm continuing from last week's episode 21, titled The Gift of Everything. Continuing that podcast about education being as the gift for the world. This is the second part, titled The Links. Now, synergies can only last for so long. So this really may be why this can be seen as a solo journey. And that is a direct quote from myself. We might have been left out of the loop of what's been formally established. And thus our achievements, if we might have them, may not be recognized because there may not have been opportunities to advance them. The ideas we have wanted to share, or even to become more educated ourselves to make contributions. Sometimes the link that's coming from the synergies just don't last very long. And sometimes they're never connected, and sometimes they're broken. But for every link that can be established, there presents an opportunity. Each time establishing the ability to connect. Those connections will be as the bridge, whether formally or not, the bridge from which we can build upon opportunities that may be present or provided. Those are the things, as we apply our abilities, that can make us wise up. W-I-S-E. Wise up. And if wisdom is truly what we seek, we will have to establish those formal links to our institutions so that everybody, although digesting separately, can benefit. From my experience that I've come to know about the equation that has evolved us, and I do call it an equation formally, because the subject of this podcast has been about my very unusual and dramatic experiences. Whereas sometimes I've mentioned them to be blessings, and some other times shared those feelings where they could possibly not have made me feel as if they were. So it's not a secret that I've had links to not only what's been formally established, thus going on to college, getting my degrees. I've even studied to the master's level, have master's degrees. And that's because I have attended institutions and furthered my education to obtain those advanced degrees. But the key to my learning was coming from someplace else. It was outside of the norm of the things that I would become truly educated about. I considered learning from institutions first class. But my outside of the norm experiences are what have catapulted me into what I consider the genius category. It could be considered the magic of the genie or whatever. Genius is just around. If we take the word genius itself, we have looked at a genius as someone being smart or exceptional. Maybe someone who has a gift of some sort. That's been the formal reasoning or why we called someone as a genius. It would be that they are looked at as an exceptional person. Now, the chaos that I have experienced and mentioned throughout this podcast has been from those out of norm situations. Some eerie, some spooky, and sometimes melancholy dreams that I've had. All of those things that have happened that were true. So it wasn't just that a certain type of clairvoyance could make me be considered as a genius. I could never even take credit for that. It is that this genius that I consider myself to have at this time was born out of the chaos. The chaos of my experiences. And so I mentioned before that there is beauty in chaos. And the beauty for myself was that I could live with those things naturally and normally afterwards. After having experienced them, moving forward in my day-to-day events and activities. Also, things happened over time for me to put things together. And so that also would help make life continue so that I wouldn't have to dwell on them. Those outside of the norm, scary and eerie things. So that was the blessing part. And I could never have held that view on my own. I figure I had a little help. I'm just a normal person. But being catapulted into the genius category took a little help. That help came from other sources. The same sources that brought me into the chaos would catapult me out of them as well. And I didn't know that until much later on. It was years in the making. So I've had a long journey processing events. Over time, it's when I would realize the true understanding and meanings of life as I could formally put together my education coming from the aerial view, which is from the top, looking over, back, from above, as well as being reflective. Actually, it took me all the way to 2023, which is this current year, to help me understand why I really had been shown those things. All of those outside of the norm and strange things that I've been talking about in this podcast. My natural and true life experiences. It is because from those things, I have become educated. And that education is truly a gift. When I say that I had a little help, I'm not necessarily speaking figuratively. I am talking about actual events that occurred. For example, I've spoken about interference, interruption. We all know what those imply. My gifts were brought at opportune times during unfortunate circumstances. So that is why I would consider it to be born from chaos. Because after having those dreams, I would become flooded with information. Just flurries, as I mentioned, as I'm sharing it, some of them in this podcast. And many are written in my book, especially my latest one, The Confusion of the Ultralight, which just came out this summer of 2023. It's chock full of the information that I'm touching upon. But what I want you to know about it, most importantly, is that information that I was given through the flurries, through the floodgates opening. It was to be the trade-off. It was to calm me down as an offset for those unsettling experiences. I was being offset, and I can say that now. It was to become indifferent as to my discovery of having had them, having had those views, having had those experiences, and those interruptions. It was so that I could continue to view things naturally, although they weren't. So I was given a gift of contemplation, of enlightenment, to broaden my world experience and to carry it as a light and vision of wisdom. The irony is that since wisdom can be born out of chaos, that does not mean that happiness will ensue. At best, we can discover our paths, what they have been in this world, and what they may become. So genius awareness is from the aerial viewing of all things. All the things we could be learning, and it will be coming to us as a gift. So I've had that gift of exchange beyond the borders of our institutions. I do call it the aerial view of knowledge, as if looking down after having experienced it with the capabilities of passing it on. And that has been the purpose of the podcast, for me to relate my stories as to my experiences. The most precious thing that I've gotten from all of this is to have solved the equation. I always knew there was one. The equation is something that evolves the world. What I didn't know, that the best gift that we could even have would be tied to our education, whether formally or informally, we must learn. And learning is the most precious gift of all. The education becomes as the equation of life. It involves a sequence of introductions, and through those exchanges, we can seek to develop. Without development, there is no life. And without truly becoming educated, we wouldn't even know about it, what life is or what it entails. So it involves us being given a precious gift to formally learn and passing on that gift to subsequent generations. That is the way the world continues, and it leads to life being forever sustained. Thank you for listening to this episode. This has been the most, I would say, eye-opening episode that I could ever pass on to you, because it involves the equation of life, which everyone and everything seems to agree that there has to be one. Tune in next week as we continue. Thank you.